Where would we be without the various products delivered by the men and women in the trucking industry? Healthy Conversations in Trucking podcast is a platform for professional long-haul truck drivers to share their journeys over the road, educating listeners about the trucking industry and lifestyle. Now, let's dive into the conversation on this brand new episode. All right. Well, I'm excited for my conversation today. I'm joining all of you on this new episode of the Healthy Conversations in Trucking podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Huntley, and I'm joined by my guest on this episode, Carrol. How are you? Welcome to the podcast.
Good. Thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I'm going to jump in because I have a lot of questions. We were chatting for just a little bit before I hit the record button. And you had me laughing already at stuff. So I was like, okay, let me start recording this so we can really dive into it and make sure that everybody else gets to hear it. So, why don't we just kind of start out with, why don't you say a little bit about yourself and, introduce yourself?
Well, again, my name is Carrol. I'm 62 years old. I tell people that 3 weeks ago, I could not spell truck driver, now R1. And I've been telling that joke for 32 years. So, I got out of the Marine Corps in 1988 and started driving in like February of 1989. And, this is where we're at today. I'm starting to count pennies now towards retirement, but, I'll get there eventually, sooner rather than later, hopefully.
Well, that's really interesting. So I'm curious, like what brought you into trucking after you left the Marine?
I was job hunting, and back in the day, in the 1980s, you didn't have to have a CDL. All you had to do was take a written chauffeur's test, and you could drive a big truck. Which I look back and I'm thinking that's insane. But I was job hunting and was talking to this one guy. I was looking for a shipping and receiving job, driving a forklift. And he goes, "Would you like to learn how to drive a truck?" And I didn't know any better. I said, "Sure, why not?" And because he said it paid a little bit more, which that got my attention.
Yeah.
So the older gentleman who was probably, I was 28 at the time. So he was in his, this guy was in his 50s and he'd been driving for 30 plus years. He took me downtown St. Louis and, showed me around a little bit. And as I tell people, I cut my teeth on the hard stuff because I could put just about anybody today in my truck on the side of the interstate behind the wheel, and you or anyone else with any type of common sense could drive that thing down the interstate. They're that easy to drive now. They're automatics, the majority of them. But when it comes to getting into cities and backing into, blindsiding into docks that you can't see, you're coming in from the wrong side. That's where you earn your money. Mm-hmm. And I was very fortunate that I learned that first, the very hard stuff first. And even later on, whenever I would be with a trainer, they would tell me, you back up better than anybody I've ever had in my truck before. And it's because I learned how to do it, right off the start.
Yeah.
I wasn't just going down the road. So, but wow. That's that. And I just, after I got into it, it's just, there's a lot worse things to be doing, for the kind of money we make today. Now, back then I was making like 13 cents a mile, which, I was running 3 log books, and truck drivers who are listening to this, who know, they know, that you had to do that to make any money. It was dangerous, but if you wanted to make a decent living, you would run 2 and 3 log books. But now you can't do that, because they got the computers, and their big brother, the government, is tracking you all the time. And normally I would say I'm against government intervention in anything because they usually screw it up. I look at the post office, look at the DMV. I mean, it's ridiculous how it's ran. But in this case, for this industry, it was high time for it to be regulated.
Right.
And there's still people, out here being stupid.
Right. So, so what did you haul back then when you first started?
Back then it was just paper products like paper cups, paper plates. It was for a company called Sterling Everest. They did like silverware. It was just some very bizarre stuff, I thought, to me. But then, as I got to know, I said, well, man, everything that's in a person's house has been on a truck at some point. And that's what a lot of people don't understand. They get mad at us truck drivers for slowing them down on the highways. But if they really stopped and thought about it, they'd be thanking us, because nothing in your house wasn't on a truck at some point. So,
it's interesting. I never even thought about that before my husband came into the picture. I just didn't think about, how things were carried on truck. It was the only thing I really considered was what I could actually see. Like I could see the cars. I couldn't see anything in the containers. So I didn't think about what was inside of the truck, what was actually being hauled.
And most people don't have any concept of that. But let a bad storm hit, where the roads are down, even the Walmart supercenters, they only have a 3-day supply of goods in their store when it comes to groceries and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So, and that's what, well, just like when the hurricanes are coming in down in Florida and whatnot, people go into the stores and they clean them out because they're concerned of being without, should the predicament last longer than what it's supposed to. So it's definitely something that everybody should be a little bit of a prepper. They should have stuff that they can put somewhere and get to in case there is ever a serious supply chain stoppage issue of any type, whether it be due to weather, civil unrest, whatever it might be. So definitely something, food for thought there.
Right. Well, what other things have you hauled since then?
From there, I started delivering Otis Spunkmeyer cookies. That used to be the only brand that Subway would carry, the Subway stores, the food stores. Mm-hmm. And I put on about 20 pounds in the first 60 days because I could have all the free cookies I wanted. It was ridiculous.
I got hungry as soon as you said that.
So, and I got to experience, because some of the places we went there in the St. Louis area were like at back in the day it was called McDonnell Douglas. It's called Boeing now, and it may even be something else. But they had all these security guards at these different places that we had to get through to deliver our stuff. And to make it go a little bit easier, we'd give them samples of the cookies. And, we had these little bags that before we would start our route, we'd go back. We had these ovens, and they were real simple. And so I started experimenting. So I put a chocolate chip, a double chocolate chip, and a sugar cookie, and smashed it all together, and would make cookie sandwiches. And they were good. They were really good. But we make probably 3 or 4 dozen a day and put on to 20 different bags so we could get through security quicker and be giving them out, and after that, my waistline was happy to see that go. So from there, I was back in just like general freight, all kinds of different stuff throughout the country. And then I hauled auto parts from a GM distribution center there in the St. Louis area, and delivered that to the actual parts to the actual dealerships, which I told your husband, Jonathan, he used to haul cars, that I could relate to what he went through, because it's not any fun trying to get a 53-foot trailer and plus a tractor in amongst all these new cars, and trying to get as close to the door as you can. And I had the fingerprint, and for the people who don't know, fingerprints mean I had to touch everything going off that truck. And we'd have returns, and I was dragging transmission cores, engine cores with a hook in these box crates because we usually didn't have a pallet jack that would fit. And I was dragging it through snow and gravel and stuff to get it up on my truck. I did that for 9.5 years, and the company I was working for, we lost the contract. Fortunately, I went from there to Yellow Freight, which is another just general freight. They're one of the best driving jobs I've ever had.
You said
but
Yellow
it's also
Freight?
a union. Yes, it was Yellow Freight then. Now it's called YRC, which is Yellow Roadway, because Roadway, which was another freight company, they joined.
That was the name of the company, Yellow Freight, not some slang term.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was like,
that was
explain
the
that
actual
to
name
me.
of the company.
Okay.
I was making money. I was making stupid money for doing nothing because it was a union job.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have a lot of patience for union people, and I'm sorry if that gets on anybody's toes out there in radio land, but these people, they were so entitled. And, here I was, I've been busting my butt for a pretty good wage the previous 9.5 years. But I get to this company where I don't have to touch any freight. If I was sitting in traffic for more than 8 minutes, I went on the clock at $22 an hour. If I was at a place where I had to put together a set of double trailers, I went on the clock at $22 an hour, and there was no time limit. I mean, these people, I would tell these guys, people, they can train monkeys to do this eventually. You better not be taking advantage. You better appreciate what you got here. I was on a team run going from St. Louis to Queens, New York, 3 times one week and 2 times the next, to Queens, New York, and back to St. Louis on a team run at 75% of pay. I was making $600 a trip for 19 hours worth of work. I mean, it was just, and I was glad to have it. I was very thankful. But these people were acting like they were just getting robbed at every turn.
So, what kind of time did you spend on the road before, returning home? How much time over the road before you go back home on average?
Well, we would leave on that particular run. We would leave at 5:30 Monday morning. We'd be back in town Tuesday evening by 4 or 5. I'd go to the gym and then go to sleep. And we'd leave out Wednesday morning at 5:30. Be back about 4 or 5 Thursday night. Go to the gym, go to sleep. Leave out Friday morning at 5:30. Be back Saturday evening around 4 or 5. Relax over the weekend, and would leave out again Tuesday. Be back Wednesday night. Leave out Thursday morning. Be back Friday night, and we just rotated. 3 trips one week, 2 the next, and I loved it. And we were only, again, my responsible part, because I had a good partner. I trusted him, so I'd say my prayers and go to sleep, and back there, and we would split the drive time. We would go about 5 to 5.5 hours a piece, splitting our drive time, and go up there and get reloaded and come back. And so it was really nice.
So how is it compared to when you have a partner like that with driving compared to when you're by yourself? Do you have a preference for one or the other?
Oh, I'd much rather be by myself because I'm kind of OCD on the way. I'm a neat freak. I like everything clean. I like stopping at certain places. I am very blessed to still have good kidneys. I don't have to stop every 2 or 3 hours like some people my age do. I can go 7 or 8 hours before I need to stop and go to the restroom. And so, again, very fortunate, very thankful. But it's just, I don't mind the solitude. I listen to Fox News a couple hours a day, and the rest of the time, I'm usually listening to Southern gospel music. and watching the miles go by. And again, I think the routine. I like routine, and I think I was like that before I went in the Marine Corps. But when I got in the Marine Corps, everything's routine. So
That makes a lot of sense.
It may have stuck with me. But
well, do you have a favorite?
And again,
oh, okay, go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just curious because you've been around. Do you have a favorite part of the country or a favorite state that you like to travel in?
I love during when it's good weather. I like going out west to like around Interstate 80 from Iowa over to Salt Lake City is a beautiful drive, unless it's during the winter. You don't want no part of that during the winter. From Salt Lake City going down into Southern California is very pretty. Again, it's all determined upon the weather. During the fall, well, like going to Queens, New York, all that time for the 2.5 years that I did that, fall and spring were just incredible. Going up through the Pennsylvania Turnpike, seeing the leaves change colors and whatnot. I love the Smoky Mountains. Unless you got a real heavy load, then it stinks.
Yeah.
Because most trucks you have today aren't built to maintain speed through mountains like that under a serious load. So, and the Interstate 10 across the bottom half of our nation, that's a good run. Interstate 20, and until you get to the Dallas-Fort Worth area is nice. And once you get past that, it's nice. It's desert. It's a whole different terrain. And you wonder how anything can survive out there, especially during the summer.
Right.
But it just depends. And to me, I was telling somebody the other day, after 32 years of doing this and being all over this country, I still stand in awe at the job that God did create in this earth and the country that we're blessed to be a part of. I mean, it's amazing if you just take a second and look around you. And I've seen some incredible sunrises, sunsets. I've seen rainbows you wouldn't believe that I can see from one end to the other. I mean, full moons that you could turn your lights off and drive down the road, no problem. I mean, It's just something that a lot of people don't get to see.
Yeah, you definitely touched on some of my favorite places too.
What's that?
Well, the I'll cross I-10. I've been through there plenty of times, and I love that part of the country and just the way that there's nothing there, but you can also watch the different landforms, how the land changes as you go from east to west and west to east.
Exactly right.
I love the Smoky Mountains. Anytime, love the Smoky Mountains.
Right.
And Iowa 80, that stretch to Salt Lake City, that's on my to-do list. That's a place I'd like to travel. And Jonathan's talked about it quite a bit. So that's hopefully I'll get a chance to travel that area at the right time. Good weather, as you said.
Right. Oh, yes, for sure. And if you could do it in an RV, all the better. Because you can stop along the, do whatever, just take your time. I mean, it's amazing. And you'll want to see the Grand Canyon eventually. Again, an RV would be the way to see it. So
what is it that you like most about what you do? What do you like most about trucking?
The freedom. There's no one breathing down my throat. You're basically your own boss, and as long as you're doing what you're supposed to do, you're not really being hassled by anyone. From a management standpoint. And again, just being able not to be trapped on the inside of a building somewhere, again, it's a freedom that a lot of people don't have. They're stuck going to the same place every day, clocking in, clocking out, which now on this new run, which I like routine. I like doing the same thing over and over. I'm kind of doing that, but I'm getting to see, I'm not stuck in one place. I'm traveling continuously.
Right.
And a lot of people, they don't have that opportunity to do. And I if they ever got a taste of this life, especially today with the kind of money that we're making, because you can do really well. I don't think there would be a shortage on truckers anymore, and there's a huge shortage, and it's getting to the point where it's scary because Congress is talking about letting 18-year-olds get CDLs that can go cross country because the shortage is so bad.
Well, what do you like least about trucking?
When my kids were younger, the time away from home, that really, I always tried to make up as much as I could. They always had doing something that was different from their ordinary routine. But now I really, especially before, and I'll give God all the credit, before God dropped this job that I'm doing now into my lap when I really wasn't looking for a job, the worst part I hated about the job I had before this was I was hauling food products. So anytime I was done with, delivering a load, I had to find some place to get the trailer washed out and sanitized, which, I understand you have to do that. But it was a pain in the behind because there's not a blue beacon around every corner. And now with the worker shortage, even if you go there during the middle of the night, you're going to spend 2 or 3 hours waiting in line.
I didn't know that you had to do that.
Oh, yeah. And trust me, with food products, you want those trailers cleaned after every use. Because especially like with meat and poultry, well, poultry's meat, but there'll be stuff on the floors of those things you don't want to get anywhere near other food. So it's a very regulated industry, which it should be, hauling food, because that's the nation's food supply, and they just have to be really super careful. And it was required. Now I was on a guaranteed salary, but you're still sitting there, like I said, in the middle of the night on your time that you could be spending getting to your next destination, or you could have spent sleeping. But you're having to babysit this trailer to get it through this wash line so that you're ready to pick up your next load, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the thing that I really was not liking.
That is interesting. I didn't know that. But, the scientist in me kind of appreciates that. But it's something I just, of course, never thought about. Every single time I have one of these interviews, I learned at least one thing new.
Well, that's good. That's very good.
Really interesting. Okay, so now I have a couple more questions before we wrap up. But I want to know I know there are a lot of health challenges associated with being over the road, just the sheer environment and limitations with truck and all the things. But what is the biggest health-related challenge that you've had over the road?
The different sleep hours, because there was not a set schedule, which I'm on one now, thankfully, but my body's still trying to adjust. So my body clock hasn't straightened out yet. Since this industry has got so regulated, now they're really watching, people with sleep apnea issues, which I'm glad they are. You don't want people out here driving sleepy. They need to have enough sense that, to get off the road when they start, dozing off or whatever, or hopefully before that. But that was the biggest thing that I was challenged with. And once I discovered melatonin, I think it's what it's called. That's helped tremendously. It's as far as getting you relaxed and getting you into sleep mode, that you can get a good solid 6 or 7 hours.
Oh, okay. So you don't have any sort of side effects or residual effects from that?
Not from melatonin, no. It's all natural. From what I understand, that's what your body produces naturally. You being a doctor, I know it's synthetic, but I've never had any ill effects from it. So I'm assuming that no one would. But other than that, trying to eat right, because of these truck stops, if you got to eat healthy, you're getting robbed. They had a mask on long before this pandemic, and they should have had a gun with the prices they were charging for us for trying to. And even in like at Walmart, if you're trying to eat healthy, you're going to pay extra. And so that is one of the things that, and I'm still pretty active. I play golf when I'm off. I'm doing push-ups at least 3 or 4 times a week in between stops. That's something that Matthew McConaughey said a few years ago. He said, "Hey, when I can't get to the gym, I just stop and do push-ups every time I think about it throughout the day." And because it's a good overall workout, it gets your heart thumping and pumping, and and I stretch. Especially the older I get, the more I stretch, so my lower back doesn't start barking. Because playing golf is when I did a lot of stupid things as a kid, playing football with no pads, and I played softball until I was 50 years old with kids half my age. And I was still diving head first, sliding, stuff like that. So I'm starting to reap the results of that foolish behavior. So, but now, I'm about 230. I could stand to lose 20 pounds. I'm thinking about cutting my head off and see if that works. If that'll get me down below weight.
Okay, I don't recommend that as a tactic. Maybe try something else, but I try to watch my girlish figure as much as I can. Well, I've really enjoyed our conversation. I just have one more question for you before we sign off. And I just want to know, you've been in this industry for over 30 years. So if someone's listening and thinking about driving, or maybe they're just sort of getting started, do you have any bit of advice or tip for other drivers who may be listening?
If they're already in it, you got to take care of your body and start, do whatever you can to get some exercise in. Don't stay in the truck longer than you need to. And this is again, right now, there's companies that are paying new drivers to come. They'll train them. They'll get them through their CDL test, and they'll have a job as soon as they're done. And as long as you keep your license clean, you'll have a job as long as you want it. And again, making a lot better money than it was when I started. So, but again, and if you've got young kids, it's going to be tough. I'm going to tell you right now, that's a decision that you're going to have to deal with, because you're not going to just jump into a job where you're home every day normally, unless you know somebody like a farmer or something that's needing a full-time driver. You might luck out, but 9 times out of 10, you're going to have to spend at least 2 weeks in the truck before you get home, normally. So just keep that in mind if you've got young kids, and it will wear and tear on a marriage if your relationship is not solid. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Yeah, great advice. Well, I appreciate you taking some time and joining me on the podcast, and for sharing your journey and story and all those great tips. So thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Healthy Conversations in Trucking podcast. Learn more or be a guest on a future episode by visiting healthyconversationsinTrucking.com or simply HCITpodcast.com.